morning. Shabbat shalom. Sabbath peace. Are you experiencing peace? Some of you look like you are you're tired. Others of you, I hope you've got some rest. You're ready to enjoy the weekend, celebrate what God has done. I just want to welcome you. If you are a visitor, we just want to thank you so much for coming. We want to be a community that's an authentic expression of the kingdom of heaven. And anyone that's new here, hopefully you've been invited, you've been given hugs, and someone's going to take you out to eat or take you to their home. It just love on you. Do you feel that way, visitors? Good. I'm just looking around to see if there are any. Assuming you are, make sure to look around, make them feel welcome and loved. Today we've been moving through Genesis, and I've had a blast with you digging through this book. Have you enjoyed this book? This book has been so much fun to just wade through. Today is going to be one of the last days we talk about Genesis for a while. Today we're going to move through the rest of the story in Genesis. We're going to cover Joseph in the multicolored dream coat. Nathan's going to come up and he's going to do a little dance for you. It's going to be a big production. It's very exciting. Are you ready for that? He's been practicing. It's going to be very neat. So before we do, let me just pray with you. God, I just thank you. We love you. We thank you that you are a good God. That you are a God that while we are in exile, while we're in brokenness, you continue to remind us of the promise. You remind us of the journey. And Lord, we thank you so much that you see so much repair and restoration just around the corner. In your name we pray, amen. How many of you have ever heard someone say, "Are you saved? Have you been saved? I got saved this week at summer camp." Have you heard people talk like that? I got saved. Saved. Jesus saves. Have you ever questioned what it really means to be saved? Saved. What does saved mean? There's some questions I might ask someone when they say, "I'm saved." Now, I think a lot of people in our culture, they're asking these questions, and we have really weird answers. Here's what someone might ask someone that says they're saved. From what? Hell? Oh. So you believe that at some point in time, God is going to send you to a place of eternal burning torment because of the 60 years you lived here. Well, when you say it that way, that doesn't sound very nice. And the same God is a God that calls himself love? Well, yeah, but he is kind of angry. Okay. And then someone will also in turn say, well, I don't find hell very compelling. When you read Scripture and you begin to delve into it, hell is actually this idea that was really brought up through the Greek culture and tradition of satisfying the gods. And hell, that kind of hell just doesn't work. It's not very compelling. It doesn't work. So maybe it's this. Maybe when Jesus comes again, he's going to bring with him the golden tickets and he'll pass those out to whoever's been good and we'll go to heaven. Or he'll bring fire. But rest assured, this is only fire that just kills you, not for eternity. Is that good news? When you begin to delve into saved and ask the question of what are you saved from, you begin to get in some kind of weird questions and your answers begin to get a little distorted. Hopefully some of you are thinking, I don't know what to think. Help me. When you begin to move through this idea of salvation and saved, what might end up happening is you might begin to think of God in terms of someone to be feared, scared of, a monster, because you are saved from his wrath. And then the question, of course, would be, well, what do I have to do to avoid this wrath? And so some of our answers have been this. Well, if you drink our Kool-Aid, we've got 28 fundamental ingredients we stir up. And if you drink this, then you're saved. But talk to the Methodists down the street, and they'll tell you, no, our Kool-Aid, that's what you drink. And then you'll talk to someone else who's experienced grace, and they'll say, it's not about the Kool-Aid, it's about what Jesus has done. And you'll think, yeah, that's good. But then it's still about a belief system. It's still about something you do in order to satisfy God. Is anyone tracking with me? Is anyone saying to themselves, I'm confused? Anyone? Shake your head. Just give me the nod. You're brave. Good. So here's what I want to share with you. For the Hebrews, not even on their radar, the stuff that we think of when we talk about salvation. Salvation to the Hebrews, it was this. It was a process of becoming. It was a cycle in which we learn and we grow. The word salvation means healing, repair. Repair from brokenness. I'm hearing it's a radio or something, and it's really distracting me. You're going to have to turn that off, my friend. Oh, good. Thank you. I have ADD. Where was I? Thank you. Salvation for the Hebrews was a process of becoming and growing into your humanity. You were made in the likeness of who? God. You were made in the likeness of God. And our journeys are to become more and more better and better reflections of the divine. That is not perfection, that's growth. And we experience this growth by healing into restoration, repair. We get broken, we scream out to God, save us, heal us. For the Israelites, they were saying, give us back home. Where repair, restoration, where healing happens, we want to go back home. That's what salvation was to the Hebrews. And so, the story of Joseph. Joseph is Israel miniaturized, and it's the story of salvation, the story of learning how to walk into your restoration, your repair, your healing, how to find healing. So here we go. Let's look at the story of Joseph. It's so weird that half of it's cut off on either side. I'll read from there. Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age. Israel, that was Jacob before, right? Jacob the deceiver became Israel, the one who wrestles with God in the darkness, comes out restored, new. And so Israel loves his son Joseph. And Joseph is blessed more than anyone else. So watch this. The nation of Israel, they were a young nation. And they believe this, deep within their tradition, they say this. The rest of the world was offered the law which brings life. Only Israel chooses to take the law, which brings life. And so God continues to bless them through their observance and understanding of who he is. And so deep in this tradition, we see it right from the get-go. And he made him an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. So here's Joseph. And the word here to describe Joseph is young. And in the Hebrew, the word actually means immature. It means your voice is cracking, you're unsure of yourself. School cafeterias terrify you. You're young, you're immature. You're unsure of yourself. And so Israel is a nation that is learning. But Israel's also been gifted great power. And what does Joseph do? What does Joseph do when he's given great power? It says he goes and he gives his father bad words about his brothers. He's kind of a daddy's boy. Daddy's boy. He tattles on his brothers. And then he's given this tunic. And in our culture, we think, oh, that's nice. It's a nice tunic. It's colorful. No wonder they were so jealous. Is it really about the color of the clothing? Or is there something deeper? And usually when we dig, there is something deeper. And here's what a robe or a cloak like this would mean for a tribe in this time period. What it meant was when you wore this, watch me now, you were the head of your tribe. Even more interesting is this. A son who wore this was always the firstborn son. What was Joseph? The last. So Joseph is flaunting this coat around, and he's essentially saying to his brothers, even though you're older than me, I will be your superior. You will bow down to me. You will serve me. Same story, Jacob and Esau. I get the birthright. I am in control. I am blessed. Israel the nation is blessed. And what do they do with their abundance? Oftentimes they take all that potential, all that growth, all of that beauty, and they steer it in the wrong direction. And that's the story of Adam and Eve. It's the story of Abraham. It's the story of the flood. It's the story that is all throughout Scripture. What do we do with our abundance? Joseph rubs it in his brothers' faces. He's that annoying little sister that gets the way better present on Christmas. And you know at some point in time, you will find a way for it to come to its demise. And so, I almost went back there, didn't I? And so, many toys were lost. So, Joseph, what he does here is so interesting because Joseph, he begins to share how great he is with his brothers. His brothers get more and more frustrated. Again, think of the 12 tribes of Israel. They break up into two, one north, one south, and it's all over blessing. Who's been blessed? They begin to have civil war. Israel's writing themselves into the story. And then Joseph has some visions, doesn't he? He has visions of grandeur. And so he sees himself here in the sheaves. He is the larger one in the middle, and all the others bow down to him. Again, sibling rivalry. He's setting up some tension, some conflict. I am greater than all of you, is what he's saying. And then it gets even worse because he says, by the way, the sun, the moon, the stars, mom and dad, everyone's going to bow to me. Does he have quite a bit of confidence? Yeah, his head's going to explode. And so he begins to share this with his brothers. The tension gets worse and worse. Until finally, one day, Dad says to Joseph, I need you to go meet your brothers. I need you to go meet with your brothers. And this is interesting to think about because if your brothers hate you and they're mad at you, why would Israel send his son Joseph to meet them out in the middle of nowhere? You think he would have thought that one through, right? But there's something really deep going on here. There's some time in between where Joseph begins to mature a bit. It's not the day after. This is years, months later. Joseph begins to mature a bit. Because here's his response to Dad when he says, go into this conflict. Head into the conflict that, by the way, you kind of started. Head into the conflict. Joseph says, very well, here I am. Send me. Here I am. Send me. And so Joseph, he actually goes to where his brothers are. But while he's going, there's a really awkward moment that isn't told very often on the felt board because we don't know what to do with it. Here's what happens is, while it appears Joseph gets lost. He's wandering in the wilderness. Come on now. Wandering in the wilderness. He's wandering in the wilderness and he gets lost. And an individual just pops out of nowhere. This man pops out of nowhere and he says to him this, what are you looking for? Think about your own journeys. When you have been wandering, when you have been lost. Those precious souls, those beautiful people who come to you and they say, Tony, you look exhausted. You keep wandering to this thing, to this thing, to this thing. What are you looking for? What is it that's finally going to make you happy? And that's what this individual says to Joseph. What are you doing? What are you looking for? In Hebraic culture, they believed that this man was either Gabriel or the divine presence of God himself. And what God does here is really interesting. He points Joseph toward his brothers. Out of the wilderness, he points him toward his brothers. He points him toward the conflict. And I think that's real prophecy. The prophetic voices are the ones that lead us to examine the brokenness that we've created and help us deal with it. Knowing there's going to be pain, it may even start on your journey with pain, but there is hope just around the corner. That's what a prophetic voice calls us to. It's not all flowers. Sometimes we have to deal with some of the brokenness, and we have to go there. And so maybe some of us need to begin some conversations, don't we? Maybe to a partner, we need to have a conversation. We need to let them know, look, I've been feeling this way. I've been frustrated. I've been feeling this or this or this happen. And we begin to have serious, open conversations with one another. And it's often painful at first, isn't it? Maybe we have open, honest conversations with a coworker or a friend, and we're able to say, look, you said this thing and it made me feel this way. Or I said this thing and I realized I broke trust, I hurt you. And those things, that's not comfortable, it's often awkward. But when you go through that thing, at the end of it, there is restoration. There's healing. The Hebrews call that salvation. So Joseph goes to meet his brothers. And when he meets his brothers, they throw him into a pit, a dried cistern. And what I really find interesting is this. Joseph, he doesn't fight back. A sign of immaturity would be him fighting and kicking and screaming and trying to fight back. He's outnumbered. But Joseph is beginning to understand, I have to go through this. The story is you're going to have to go through this before you can experience new life, resurrection, salvation. Israel, in the middle of your captivity in Babylon, you're going to have to go through this thing. And it's not easy. It's really actually painful. You're going to go through it. But at the end, on the other side, there is promise. There's salvation. And so Joseph goes and he's thrown into a dry cistern. And that's actually where a lot of murders would happen at these dry cisterns. That's where they'd throw bodies, and they wouldn't bury them. It's like the most disgraceful thing you can do to a body. They don't bury it, they just throw it into this cistern. And so Joseph goes into the cistern. There's an exchange of money, silver. We've heard this story before, haven't we? There's a deception. There's silver exchanged. They go to dad. They say he's been eaten by an animal. And we're told Israel mourns the loss of his son, and he's deceived. And so, after the pit, we're told that Joseph goes into Egypt. And what I love about this story is Joseph, he goes to Egypt, he becomes a slave. And again, this should be a constant theme all throughout. You should see it over and over again. We go into exile. We're reminded of who God is. He pulls us out of exile. We wander for a bit. We unlearn some things. Then we move into the promised land. So this goes over and over again. So Joseph goes into slavery. And he's there in Potiphar's, he's there as one of Potiphar's servants, his slaves. And here's what happens is he does really well. And his work begins to bless Potiphar, much like it did for Egypt and Babylon and all the other empires that Israel is under. And then, because power is kind of seducing, Joseph has a moment where he can misuse his power and his abundance because somebody notices him. Potiphar's wife one day is feeling frisky, and she sees this handsome specimen of a man, Joseph. And she runs to him and she tries to seduce him, but Joseph is beginning to understand how to use power and authority. He says, I will not go there anymore. I won't misuse this power and this abundance God has given me. It's a blessing. I won't go there. He turns, he runs away. She grabs his cloak. How awkward. He's naked. He's running away. Talk about a weird situation. He runs away, his cloak in her hand. And what happens next? Instead of being praised for his morality, there's a deception. There's always a deception. He's thrown into prison. And by the way, when a Hebrew is reading this, they would understand immediately. If a slave did this to his owner, they would be put to death. End of story. Joseph is put in the royal prison. Again, God will protect you. He will provide for you, even when you have been mistreated and abused. He's there in the prison. He meets the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, all of them, right? He meets them all there in the prison. And at one point, they have these dreams. And Joseph begins to interpret the dreams for them. And you guys, a lot of you know this story. The one has this one dream, the other has another dream, and Joseph basically interprets it. He says, oh yeah, you cupbearer, you're going to live, and you're going to go back. Your head's going to be removed. Sorry. Then what happens, of course, is that this happens, this occurs. He loses his head. The other one's promoted back to his position. And he forgets about Joseph. And he has to stay in prison a little bit longer, which again is the story of Israel. They're stuck a little bit longer, but Joseph holds on to the promise. He holds on to the promise that God will bring us healing, repair, restoration. And sure enough, Pharaoh has a really crazy dream. And by the way, for us, when we read it, we've read this story a couple times and we don't see anything crazy about it. But imagine this, if we were to actually animate this would be really creepy. These one cows, they're really skinny. And they show up and they see the really heavy cows, the ones that, they've had quite a bit to eat. They go and eat the other ones. We're like, what? This would be really grotesque. So for these people reading it, they're like, what? What's going on? And so Joseph, what he does here is he interprets the dream. He interprets the dream for Pharaoh. Interpretations of dreams, we see this a lot throughout Scripture. And it's easy to fall prey to the graphs and all these other things, the decoder rings, and trying to figure out. Here's what you need to know about the interpretation of dreams, because for the Hebrews, this meant a lot. When someone has been formed through pain and suffering, people who go deep into their stories and find healing, they are able to dream bigger dreams. They are able to cast deeper vision, interpret the beauty of God's words in really powerful, life-sustaining ways. They're able to hear other people's stories and help them wade through their stories. This is true prophetic voice, and this is what Daniel, this is what Joseph, this is what many of them do. And so he interprets the dream. He says, 7 years famine, 7 years abundance. Luckily, you'll have the abundance before the famine. Prepare for it. And so Egypt prepares for it. And by the way, do you know that there were many famines in Egyptian history? Let me give you a little more. And there are many writings in Egyptian history where one person would step up and he would remind his people to keep the abundance they had and able to share it with others. These cycles were pretty natural. When the Hebrews read this, they were like, well, yeah, we understand that. This was common. But what is the difference? It's coming through Israel's God. Israel's God protects his people. And so there in the abundance, something really powerful happens. Joseph has 2 kids. He has 2 kids. And for many of us, we miss the point of it altogether. We just think, that's nice. He has some kids. Got a new house. Put up a picket fence. Christmas sweaters, dog. They have the whole deal. So beautiful. Here's the beauty of it. All these names, they all have meaning. So Manasseh, this is what Manasseh means. Manasseh means this: I have moved away from all the pain and the brokenness, and God has helped me look back at that, and I am able to rename those things. That pain and the brokenness, all those things I experienced, they were only stepping stones in order for me to understand who I am. They made me stronger. So Joseph, in the middle of all of this abundance, is able to scream out, Manasseh. My story is good. My life is changed. I am able to see those things for what they were. And then after he says it, Ephraim, which means abundance, multiply. God begins to multiply and bless when we're able to get to these places where we understand our stories. Anyone get this? Say amen. Thank you. That's more affirmation for me, like I just did something well. It's so beautiful. Manasseh, Ephraim. And then after this, what happens is, of course, we get the great reveal. All the brothers come and somehow they were not able to recognize Joseph, but he recognizes them. And we have this reveal where he shares with them, this is who I am. Bring the whole family. The whole family hops in their hillbilly wagon and they head off, found gold. I'm just kidding. But they head off to this promised land, this place near Egypt where they're going to thrive. And we know the rest of the story because it's actually the beginning of the story for Israel. They begin to multiply and grow until Egypt gets scared and they put their thumb down on Israel again. And Israel will go through this cycle once again. For Joseph, he goes through a cycle just like Israel goes through cycles. And here's the cycle in a nutshell. You're given abundance. You are Adam. You are Eve. You're given all this potential to do what you can with the abundance God's given you. And sometimes we choose to steer it in the wrong direction. And then when we steer it in the wrong direction, we actually move away from Eden, away from promised land. And we go into exile. But there in exile, there comes a point where God says, here's who I am. And we call out to him and he frees us, and then we wander in the wilderness for a bit. And we unlearn and we learn certain things. And then we begin to vision and get a better idea that there's something better out there. And after we vision and we dream dreams, we begin to move toward the promised land, salvation, healing, restoration. This is the cycle they go through. And so my question to you right now is this. Where are you? Where are you in this journey right now? Are you at a place where you're learning hard lessons? You keep repeating these same vicious cycles. You keep going back to that thing that you thought was going to bring you healing, but it only makes you feel emptier and emptier. Where are you in this journey? Are you in a place of brokenness? Have you been hurt by someone and you just can't let it go? Or have you hurt someone and you're unwilling to go to the pit and ask for forgiveness? Are you in this place where you just don't know? I don't know what I know anymore. I don't know what to believe. Is that you? Is that where you are in the story? Are you in a place of pain, brokenness? Where are you in the story? Wherever you find yourself in this story, please know this. The promise is still true, no matter where you are in the story. The promise is still true. Right around the corner is resurrection. Right around the corner is new life. A couple weeks ago, I served my country. I was told by the judge I'm a hero. I went to jury duty. And I went there to Santa Ana to go to the courthouse. By the way, you have to be in a very long line just to do jury duty. I feel like they should make it easier. But I got there, and I'm driving, I pull up into the parking garage, and I do what I always do. I get out of the car, and I look, check my surroundings. Okay, good. And so I head to the courthouse, and I actually sit there in the courthouse for hours, all day. It was like 8 hours. And I actually had this weird sadistic thought, I hope they call my name. 8 hours, I was sitting there. And finally someone said, "You all are dismissed." And there was a great movement, a mass of people rejoicing. We're singing hymns, praise the Lord. And we all leave, and we're heading home. And I get into the parking garage, and I know where my car is. So I walk up to where my car is not. It's not there. And I'm looking, I'm like, where did my car go? Like, it was here, I swear it was here. I knew my surroundings. And then it occurs to me, someone stole my car. My 16-year-old car that I wouldn't steal. That doesn't make sense. And so I start looking, and I'm beginning to panic. Don't laugh at me. You do the same thing in a parking lot. At least I was in a parking garage or levels. So I'm starting to look around, and I'm walking all over, and I am panicking. I'm like, where's my car? Where's my car? I got to go pick up my kids. Where's my car? And I'm looking, and I see this woman who has it all together. She's got a cute little purse, her high heels, and she's just, there's her car. Barbie gets in her car, takes off. And I'm so mad. I'm like, where's my car? So I grab my alarm, and I hit it. And I'm listening. I hear it off in the distance. But the problem with a parking garage is that it echoes. So I'm like, where is my stinking car? And I'm walking around like this. I'm listening. I'm trying to find my car. And I did this for 20 minutes. And I'm sure I'm never going to see my car. I'm beginning to think, maybe I'll just live in this parking garage. I'll never find my car, my kids. I'm not going to be able to pick up my kids. This wound will never heal between them. I'm just going crazy. And I keep hitting the panic button. And as I hit it more and more, I am panicking more and more. Until finally, this voice, this heavenly voice, it says, stupid. Breathe. And I breathed. And I breathed again. And that voice told me, this panic button is actually a really good thing. Because it is assurance, letting me know that my car is in the lot somewhere. And stupid, if you would just breathe and just spend a little bit of time, Tony, walking around the lot, your panicked state has caused you to miss your car, to not see it. And it's hurting you. It's prolonging your wandering. And so, I hit the panic button again. I took my deep breath, and in minutes, my car, I found it just around the corner, no lie. Right there around the corner. Some of you right now, like me, we wander and we begin to get panicked because sometimes the promise is not so easy to see. The promise of salvation, there's healing, there's wholeness just around the corner, but sometimes it's hard to wait on that promise. And so we panic and we freak out and we think worst case scenarios. We freak out. The panic button is actually really good assurance that you are still alive. You're still breathing. There's still life in you. Your journey is not over. I don't believe we were made to live in parking spaces. I believe we're called to drive into chaotic, messy, beautiful roads that are set before us. And these roads are filled with salvation moments of healing. And that road, it's going to continue on, and you will experience salvation here, now, and into eternity. What a beautiful promise God has given us. And so wherever you find yourself today, if you're in the brokenness and the questioning, saying, where are you, God? You're walking around the lot and you're screaming, I just can't find it. I'm so panicked. May you, in this moment, turn to God, breathe, and say, I believe the promise. Hope is just around the corner. The promise is good.